nothing will sit in somebody's mind about you being a badass musician if you show up on a gig with no rehearsal or one rehearsal, but you still kill it anyways.
Yeah.
I have been sober
Mm.
for 19 years. I bought a house
Hmm.
as a musician.
Who's your favorite drummer of all time?
John Bonham.
Is AI going to affect what you guys do?
That's such a great question. Um,
Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Gig. I'm your host, Mike Redman. This is The Working Drummer, a 4-part series packed with insights on thriving as a freelance drummer, groove development, networking, session work, and the mindset that makes it all possible. Today's guest is the incredible Patrick Armitage, a standout drummer from Nashville with powerful advice that will elevate your musical journey. I really hope you enjoy this series, and if you do, please take a moment to like the show and share it with others. So as always, let's jump right in. So Patrick, I wanted to thank you for joining me today on Gig. This is a series on working drummers.
okay.
And the reason I'm doing this is I have a lot of drummer friends and
Yeah.
I have a lot of musician friends, and they're all kind of trying to, find out how to navigate the world today and actually keep working. For our
Yeah.
listeners, you live in Asheville, North Carolina.
Asheville, North Carolina. Yep.
The first time I saw you was at Black Mountain and with the tribute band Dirty Logic. So
Yeah.
I was I was listening to you play the outro of Asia, and
Uh-huh.
it just took me back. It was like hearing a young Steve Gadd. You know,
Right.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
you're creative, effortless,
Yeah.
precise. I mean, you're quite an incredible drummer. And
Thanks.
that particular next show that I saw you was at a place I can't remember that is closed now. It was in the fall. But anyway, yeah, I was sitting next to your dad. So
Oh, yeah. That's amazing. Was it the
yeah.
salvage station? The
Yes,
outdoor?
yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just
Yeah. So
before they were
that,
closing it down, right?
right. Right. Well, and then now it's completely doesn't exist. The
Did it wash
hurricane.
away? It did.
Oh my gosh. It is completely destroyed. Yep.
Oh man,
Yeah.
wow. I mean, that whole thing
Yeah.
in Asheville, we won't go there today. I mean, because we're
Yeah.
also right in the middle of the fires in
Right.
California, and we could
Get
go
it.
down a rabbit hole too quick.
Yeah.
But actually, Dirty Logic is probably by far the best tribute band that I've ever heard ever. I told some
Yeah.
of my friends afterwards, I was like, God, I heard this band called Dirty Logic, and they were playing, Steely Dan tracks, and I never heard Steely Dan play them that well.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Dirty Logic is, um, and this is by design.
Uh-huh.
Every Steely Dan tribute I've seen online, or if I see people play Steely Dan,
Hmm.
it's always kind of like, your dad's garage band,
Yeah.
like playing these songs reminiscent. But Steely Dan was composed of obviously, Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, but they always brought in these great studio
Yeah.
musicians. And when we started it, it was like, we got to get the whole thing with that band is get the best players in Asheville,
Hmm.
and we got to do it like the record.
Yeah.
And if you can't hang, then
Yeah.
you can't hang, and we'll go find the people who can. And so that's how we try to honor it. And as a result, I mean, we tons of people come out and see us, and
Yeah.
we're getting some notoriety and all that stuff. But I love playing in that band because as a musician, you want to be playing with these players who are just amazing, and
Yeah.
that's why I love Dirty Logic so much.
Yeah. Tomorrow I'm interviewing a guy named John Hammond, who I'd
Mhm.
mentioned earlier. And he's one of the, I would say, I hate to use the word top, but he's one of the most, the first call drummers in Nashville, session drummers.
Nice.
And he
Yeah.
plays with a band called the Smoking Section. And
Nice.
you should listen to them sometime. They're
I
awesome
will.
horn band. And one of my
Love it.
dearest friends started that band. He's not around anymore. But look, what we're going to talk about today, and the
Hmm.
mission of this series is to help drummers that are out there, you know, understand that there is lots of opportunity. and there's also
Yeah.
lots of challenge, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to kind of jump into it because you play with Dirty Logic, but you don't, you're not playing a full-time gig, so you're
Right.
playing other jobs. And
Yeah.
so I'd like you to, if you don't mind, maybe talk about some of the other types of jobs that you do as a drummer first.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I would consider myself just a working
Hmm.
musician, a working drummer, a working session drummer. And when you're working as a drummer,
Hmm.
you're going to do some passion projects like Dirty Logic, and we
Yeah.
we do really good financially, but it's not a full-time thing, like you said. And if I want to have actual work and have an actual income and pay my mortgage, I'm going to be playing weddings and
Hmm.
I'm going to be playing pickup gigs where somebody might call me 2 days in advance and throw up, give me a set list of, 30 songs to learn in 2 days and, for $150. And, I also do, not as much as I have in the past, but I do a lot of albums,
Oh,
a lot
wow.
of recording, get flown around. I've kind of flown all around the country to do that. And and yeah, other tributes. I have a Beastie Boys tribute that I
Oh,
do, which
cool.
is
Oh,
really
that's wild.
fun. And the Steely Dan tribute, and I just got asked to do an Alanis Morissette tribute, right? So,
Oh, hmm.
when you're a working musician like that, you're really doing a lot of covers, a lot of
Hmm.
weddings, a lot of that kind of stuff, or you're
Yeah.
subbing for an original project, but you're kind of not the main dude. And granted, I've been the
Mm.
main dude in a lot of bands,
Yeah.
but as a working musician, um, it's really hard to be in a main stable project.
Right.
That's just you know, because if you're doing that, oftentimes you're on the road for
Hmm.
200 days a year, and that in
Yeah.
itself is a whole other challenge. So,
Right. So, how do you, I mean, so you stay busy in that world doing different types of gigs. Um,
yeah,
do you have to actively, network for those or, how did you kind of, I mean, you've obviously been doing it a long time, so there, a lot of them are just calling you
yeah,
because they know you now. But maybe even
yeah,
looking back a little bit, did you have to kind of, go out, call the wedding planner? You know what I mean? What did you do?
right. Well, I think I could even kind of go back, to have all this make sense. It would really kind of go back to the beginning,
Hmm.
but I can do this really quickly. I mean, I started
Yeah,
playing
sure,
when I was,
absolutely.
I went to an arts high school, where they really encouraged me to be playing. So I was
Hmm.
16 years old and got into this band with these guys that were in their early 20s.
Hmm.
And I was playing 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week when I was a
Wow.
junior in high school. So I'm from Minneapolis.
Okay.
And so that's the scene I came up in. And ultimately, that band had a little bit of a reputation. And so I met a lot of different, musicians and stuff when I was younger. Um, and I started doing the jobbing thing when I was like in my late teens, early 20s, getting
Mm,
calls from other people who said, "Oh man, I saw you play with, this band or that band, and we
right.
really need a drummer for whatever." But I was lucky enough. Now, this is after 10 years of doing that.
Yeah.
I was from 16, and then I would say kind of my first bigger thing. There was a bunch of different things, honestly, but I ended up playing with this girl, Jessie Lang, who is Kid Johnny
Hmm.
Lang's sister.
Nice.
Yeah, and we started doing some touring, and she got on American Idol, and so there was a little whatever, a little notoriety there. But then I got a gig in Minneapolis with this hip hop group Atmosphere, and
Hmm.
they're a big, humongous hip
Yeah.
hop band. But that was after 10 years
Yeah.
of just grinding and grinding. And what that did was it gave me enough notoriety that people were like, "Oh, this guy's somebody," you
Right.
know. Um, and when I left that, I moved out to Hawaii, which is a whole other long story. But it is a long story. But when I moved out there, having played in this band that had some notoriety,
Hmm.
I just walked into these awesome gigs because people were like, "Oh, this is
Ah,
a guy who's done some things," you
yes.
know?
Yep.
And then when I moved to Asheville, um, which was about 13 years ago, uh, I ended up, getting picked up to be the main guy in a band
Mm.
called the John Stickley Trio. John's this great flat picking bluegrass player in kind of the
Yeah,
Billy
I listened to
Strings,
a little bit of them. Yeah. Hmm.
really heavy, cool, awesome stuff. But that band then started to get some notoriety. And so then, you just had some things attached to, you get some things attached to you where you get some notoriety. You're playing festivals, you're meeting all kinds of different people. And when you do that year after year after year, eventually that's how you get established. And then, when I left Stickley, it was too much time on the road. Uh, I've been in the Asheville music scene ever since then, and
Hmm.
it's kind of a, I guess you could say, like big fish, small pond.
Yeah.
And once you're the guy, you just get picked up for stuff. And but now what's really cool, and I love that you're having Logan Jane on.
Yeah.
Now there's a younger generation
Yeah.
of guys in their 20s who are just slamming players,
Hmm.
and they're starting to pick up all these gigs too. But yeah, so a lot of networking, but a lot of experience, and then at the end of the day, and then but to top all of that off, you
Hmm.
have to be able to play,
Yeah, I was going to
and
ask you
you
about that. I mean, did
right.
you, through all these years of kind of climbing that little ladder, were you just, working on your chops and your groove the whole time?
Um, yeah. So when I got into that band when I was 16, we were playing all kinds of covers and all kinds of stuff. And we were playing it out live. So I had to learn all this stuff really
Mm.
quick. But it wasn't, when I was 19, I studied under Dave King,
Hmm.
who's the drummer for the Bad Plus, just a renowned jazz drummer. And I studied with him every week for like 6 years, and I took it
Wow.
very seriously. I was practicing, 1 to 2 hours a day, every single day. I
Hmm.
was picking up different gigs, different jazz gigs, different,
Yeah.
pop gigs, punk rock gigs, hip hop gig, all this stuff. And so eventually I developed a very basic foundation for a lot of different styles.
Hmm.
And then I had the experience so that any gig I walk into, I mean, I'm prepared, but I just have the confidence to do it because I've done it, and I've done it in a pinch.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. That takes the confidence to say, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Speaking of styles, I mean, um, I was a composer, a
Uh-huh.
R&B guitar player. I
Oh
actually
yeah.
started as a really, really bad drummer, but I know I love drums. Did you have to struggle at all to be in some of these styles authentic?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Hmm. Yeah.
Still to this day, if I play a jazz gig,
Hmm.
like I have just enough, like I have really good swing and the Latin feels and stuff. I have those feels down,
Hmm.
but I feel like I am faking my way through it.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
And to the average listener, it sounds great because the swing and the feel is there, but it isn't an authentic space for me
right.
where I know, like I just don't know jazz standards. I don't know the catalog. I don't know the real book.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so it's like, yep, I'm swinging my way through, and but as a working drummer, you
Mhm.
have to be able to make that look like you still know what you're doing.
Right. Exactly. That's where I was going.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and there's all kinds of different ways to do that. And a lot of it is being able to either have a conversation with somebody in the band beforehand. Typically, it's the bass
Mhm.
player where it's like, you know, give me the look when the thing is about to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
love that. The
Like
thing.
if
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
stop
Uh-huh.
coming up, you're gonna look at me, and I always say
Uh-huh.
the I'm sure people have heard me say this that have played with me on these kinds of gigs. But I always say on gigs, on a pickup gig where I don't know the material,
Yeah.
I am like an indoor cat outside for the first time,
Oh, okay.
where I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay, now, is it happening now? Okay, okay, Um, and you
Funny.
have to, that's you can
Mhm.
prepare to the best of your ability, but
Yeah.
sometimes you got 1 day's notice for 30 songs,
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
just got to be in it and trust that somebody's going to be like, 3, 2, 1, stop,
Boom.
right? So
Did you
yeah.
ever play like a wedding gig in the morning and a hip hop gig in the afternoon?
Oh, for sure. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. That's a real regular thing. As a working musician, you got to make the money.
Yeah.
Funny enough, our we Dirty Logic just played Diana Wortham, which is our performing arts center here in Asheville
Oh
two
yeah, I
nights
just saw
ago.
that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, completely sold out. That's always
Nice.
great.
Nice.
But our keyboard player, he was going to go up for the inauguration of the governor of
Hmm.
North Carolina. He was going to go up and play in Raleigh that morning
Really?
at 11 a.m. and then drive back here, go straight to sound check. It got canceled because of the snow. But
Mm.
and he called me and he said, "Are you cool if I do that?" And I was like, it was going to be a high paying gig. I was like, "Yeah, man, go for it."
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to put on different hats same
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
fun. I mean, I think when you're as accomplished as you are, it's actually a lot of fun to do that kind of
yeah,
stuff. If you're
yeah.
not, it's like, oh shit, now what is that Latin beat? I forget.
Right,
Um,
right.
so uh, Pat, is it Pat or Patrick?
Patrick, I prefer Patrick.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Patrick, do you have a day job too?
Yeah, so that's a great question for every working musician. The majority of them, you'll always hear that they like have waited tables or
Yeah,
some
yeah,
sort of service industry or in the music industry running sound or whatever.
sure.
And I did that for years and years. I mean, I would I waited tables all the way up until I was in like my mid to late 30s.
Wow.
Um, but now I do real estate.
Okay. Well, it's
Yeah.
a good town for that.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense, and I think that most musicians. I have a lot of friends in LA, and they are either they're juggling five different music
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
everything from being a teacher to
Yeah.
a friend that I have a friend that's a
Yeah.
bass player. He writes, he
Yeah.
does this, he does that, he does this, and he does that, and he makes a good living. But
Yeah.
if it's a really hard world to live in, you know what I
Stressful.
mean?
You have
Yeah.
to like, especially if you're in a partnership, like
Hmm.
marriage, whatever, it's like this is not a normal 9 to 5 white
Yeah.
picket fence situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is sometimes I get home at 4 in the morning and
Yeah.
sleep in until noon. And
Uh-huh.
then sometimes I have to get up at 6 a.m. to go do a real estate thing. And so it's very wonky in that regard.
Yeah. Some people will probably hate when I say this, and I'll probably hear about it, but it's really good to be a musician and like married to the chick singer.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? I
Yeah.
didn't mean
Somebody who
chick in a
gets it.
bad way
Yeah.
for those that
No,
don't know
I
what it
get it,
means.
man.
Patrick, what are some of the characteristics or qualities of a drummer that will help them stay relevant and maybe successful over the long haul?
I would say probably the number one thing
Hmm.
is to be a good hang.
Okay. Yeah.
You be a good hang. You want to
Yep.
be somebody where because there's a million players out there
Hmm.
that are better than you.
Yeah.
And and if it's a big enough band,
Hmm.
they have the pick of the litter of those people. But the
Right.
people that they're going to choose are going to be the people they want to hang out with.
Yep.
The people where there's low drama, the people
Hmm.
where there's no, they don't have like excessive drinking. Like I quit drinking like almost 20 years ago.
Hmm.
And what that kind of guarantees
Hmm.
for anybody who hires me is that I'm going to at least not be a mess at the end of the night.
You're going to show up.
I'm going to show up. Yeah. Um, so I think that is actually the
Hmm.
the number one thing.
Okay.
You'd be surprised at how quickly arrogance and ego and all
Oh,
of this kind of stuff. People don't want to be around that.
yeah, yeah.
People don't
And
want to be
it
around
follows
that.
a lot of musicians.
Yeah,
It's they can't really shake it. Their
right. Yeah,
self-esteem or their is low, and they're always trying to
yeah,
build it up. And a lot of times they
yeah,
don't even understand why they're not getting hired, right?
right. Yeah,
Um, well, that's cool. So back to Dirty Logic for a minute.
yeah, sure.
So what's it like to play in a tribute band? I've been I've been to a couple of your shows, and I know it's very gratifying to
Yeah.
be in a band like that. But is it different than other gigs?
Hmm. Well, that gig in particular is very unique.
Hmm.
There's 11 of us.
Yeah.
So, um, you have this big machine with all these moving parts, and it's very challenging music to play,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
At times it's really straight ahead for me, but that's the magic about Steely Dan is it seems really simple
Hmm.
until you have to learn it and play it. And
Yeah.
there's all these little sneaky things, and you have to remember it. Um, but I love that music. I love having a four-piece horn section. I love having three singers. I love
Hmm.
having the best rhythm section I've ever played in. Um, and I love that there's a lot of songs that feature the drums.
Yeah.
I get like I'm not a big drum solo guy, but it's cool to have, one or two features in a
Hmm.
performance. As a drummer, you're anonymous for the most
Yeah.
part in every band that you
Yeah.
do. Um, but to get that little bit of shine is really cool, and especially that it's Asia. It's one of the most iconic
Yeah. Right.
drum solos so yeah. And I love too that we have just such a dedicated, smart fan base that can really hear and appreciate that we put in real work to make the band sound as good as it does.
Yeah. Yeah, it is quite amazing. I mean, it's me being a guitarist, and we used to play a lot of Steely Dan too, but not to the level that you guys do.
Right.
But I knew that when I played the solo in My Old School or Peg or Kid Charlemagne, that it better be
Yeah.
note for note with
No for no.
because people didn't expect you to, they didn't want you to screw it up. I mean, you
Right.
you go offline for a minute, and they're like, well, you screwed up the song, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's one of those bands where they're being precise. I actually was in the studio with Steely Dan at one point in
No
my
way.
career back down in Criteria when they were doing Peg. Um, just an amazing experience, and it's
What were you
wonderful.
doing? What
I
were you
was
doing?
actually at the time I had a band and we were recording for Atlantic, and it was a
Nice.
Criteria in Miami. So everybody and their brother, that was the hot studio then. Barbara Streisand in
Yeah.
here,
Right.
Steely Dan in here. Oh gosh, the Bee Gees in here. I mean, it's just one of those places. It
That's
was a
so
very
cool.
magical time for
Yeah.
me. I
Oh, I
never.
love that.
It was really something special. So
Yeah.
let's go to Asheville for a minute.
Yeah.
Very active in the community,
Yep.
um, moving back from Hawaii to be closer to your family,
Yeah.
and that much must have been a little bit of culture shock, right?
Well, especially because I'm from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So I had never lived in the South.
Hmm.
And granted, Asheville is this very, liberal, progressive beacon when it's very transient and
Yeah.
so when you're in Asheville proper, it doesn't feel like you're, in the South, but you go 15 minutes outside of it. And I always thought that, this kind of Confederate flag thing was kind of like just a stereotype that wasn't
Uh-huh.
very real. And then you get in and you're like, oh my, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I do have a lot of appreciation for the South now and Southern culture. I mean, I've been here for
13
13,
years.
14
Yeah.
years. Yeah. So, but yeah, culture shock, from Minneapolis to Hawaii to Asheville is
Mhm.
a very unique.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Kind of one question though, does that hurt the venues in Nashville? the recovery?
like the that it's kind of tourism dependent and
Whatever, just for playing music. I mean, the music venues, are they still doing okay? Or
yeah, I mean, um, man, it has been a big challenge just
hmm
because of, post hurricane and all of that stuff. I mean, honestly, there's been post COVID.
oh, mm,
Um, there's, been a lot of changing of places. Some places have
hmm
closed down, but people still show up. What made me feel so happy was there was the snowstorm just the other
yeah,
night,
hmm
and but because it wasn't all that bad, we still kept our Diana Wortham show,
uh-huh.
and it still was completely sold out. So
That's cool.
people still showed
Yeah,
up, and they
yeah,
still wanted to get out and support. And so I'm really hoping to see. I think we'll have a greater vision of how things will be moving forward come springtime.
yeah,
I think everybody's kind of still shell shocked right now.
yeah. I guess you're right. So,
Yeah,
just a real quick little rapid fire for you.
yeah, yeah.
Who's your favorite drummer of all time?
John Bonham.
Oh, okay. You have okay. I'm gonna stop there for a second. Why?
So I'm a Led Zeppelin loving drummer turned everything else.
Oh,
You
okay. Uh-huh.
know that was my big inspiration. That was the reason why I started playing the drums.
Mm.
I remember listening to Good Times, Bad Times, and listening to him do that, the triplet on the foot,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and just thinking that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard. Uh, And now I could give you a list of a million other drummers, and next in line is the guy I studied under, Dave
Uh-huh.
King from the Bad
Mhm.
Plus. Honestly, he's still to this day the drummer who I think is like the greatest, even
Mhm.
though I hate using that term because that's all
Yeah.
relative. But at the end of the day, I still just love Led Zeppelin forever. I will.
That's
And
cool. That's cool.
my
Mhm.
playing my play even on jazz gigs, my
Uh-huh.
playing is always going to be a little bit reminiscent of that. Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. I'm gonna listen for
Yeah.
that for now on.
Yeah.
You just made me think of. Do you have a drummer, a contemporary drummer that's out there that people should listen to?
I would say Dave King,
Hmm
even though I've mentioned him a million times. Benny Greb. There's there are so many
Yeah, there's a lot.
drummers. Uh El Estapario. Oh, what is his name? He's kind of one of these YouTube guys. Um, just so many phenomenal players out there. But I'm still, I'm pretty old school.
Yeah.
I really am. Although I would say like anybody who's ever played with Snarky Puppy
Oh, yeah. That's
is
yeah,
is you
yeah.
know all those guys are just, and I think they're kind of the new generation of
hmm
the old school, jazz, modern jazz back then,
Modern jazz funk thing. Yeah.
modern
Yeah.
jazz funk thing, and then these guys have taken it to a whole new level. Yeah.
How about this? Do you have a hobby that outside of music not has nothing to do with music?
Yeah, I have many hobbies. But the thing I've fallen in love with the most
Hmm
over the last several years is scuba diving.
Really? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can do that in
yeah.
Nashville. Yeah.
Plenty of Well, that's how I got certified here, actually, weirdly enough. But no, I travel about once every 2 to 3 months.
hmm
And I'll just, I suppose I was 45 when I got into it, and at that time I thought I'm a pretty, I know who I am as a human being,
Yeah.
pretty set in my ways. All of a sudden I started scuba diving, and I was like, I'm passionately in love with this.
Really
It
fantastic.
is the quietest my mind ever
Hmm
becomes, and it is like going to a brand new world where you can fly. It's amazing. I absolutely love it.
That's very cool. It's wonderful to
Yeah.
have a passion like that about anything,
It's
especially
yeah.
yeah. When I was a kid, I was playing guitar 14 hours a day. you know,
Yeah.
and
Same.
it's
Yeah.
really nice. Now I play every once in a while because I got so many other
Right.
things I'm interested
Right.
in. So this is I have to ask this. I don't know that there's really any answer for you, but is AI going to affect what you guys do, or is it?
That's such a great question. And I think about this all the time, and
Uh,
we're all going to be thinking about this for years to come
sure.
because it's really going to be prominent in everybody's lives, music,
Yeah.
non-music, whatever. But this is where I've been kind of realizing lately is the one thing that AI cannot do
Hmm.
is perform live.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep. Yep.
Um, So I think that in a way, and this already happened, like the minute that Spotify and stuff happened and
Hmm.
artists weren't making money on CDs, people had to start performing live.
Sure.
But AI can create music and you can just tell it what you want it to do and it can do it, but
Hmm.
it can't get on stage and play live. And so I think that AI ultimately might serve the live music industry because it's
Hmm.
something that it cannot provide, and people are always going to want that.
I think that's a great answer, Patrick. And
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I can actually visualize that. You know, you can see one guy up there with his DJ setup or whatever,
Right. Yeah,
emulating, but there's
right,
something that just cannot be replaced. You cannot
right,
replace the energy that comes off that stage. Yeah.
right. One thing I will say about that answer, though,
Mhm.
and me as a musician, is that answer is completely different because of what I do as a working musician.
Mm.
If I was a songwriter or a
Hmm.
creator,
Yep.
um, or something like that, my answer would be this scares the shit out of me. I don't know how I'm going to be able to compete with something that can create all of this in the blink of an eye.
Yep. And
But from my
yep.
perspective, yeah,
That's I mean that's a really just a good distinction. But you know the
right,
I'm actually have a series I'm going to record next week or two. Some really incredible people, but it's called AI and music, and
yeah,
it starts at the very beginning. What the hell is an AI? You know, and
hmm,
I hope they probably won't watch the drummer one, but I'm worried. You know, I'm
hmm,
trying to set this
yeah,
up so after four, I think it's 4 or 5 series episodes, that they're not trying to quit. You know, because
right,
I was a musician, I was a composer. I hear what's coming out now, and it doesn't scare me because I don't do it anymore. But
yeah,
it's advancing so fast
so fast,
that pretty soon, no, not pretty soon, maybe a year, 2 years, you're going to
yeah,
be able to have it copy anything, and nobody is going to be able to tell. There's actually a
right.
company that has one guy in it that I'm interviewing, and he said, "We generate music now, and we can't tell what we had generated." And I was like, "Uh oh."
That's
So
absolutely nuts. I mean,
now, but the key is to make it a tool. I think the key is, make it part of your
right,
arsenal.
right, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean that's what hip hop did that back when it started coming out. They weren't creating the music; they were taking music
Right.
that already existed, cutting
Hmm.
it up, and turning it into something new.
Yeah.
And now this is kind of this new thing where again, it's not the musicians actually making the music; it's going to
Hmm.
be somebody's idea using a tool to create it. So
Yeah. It's pretty
I,
crazy.
you know,
Last question for you, Patrick, and that's, do you have any advice for drummers about staying busy and maybe starting to create a healthy financial future for themselves?
that is such a good question too. My suggestion for anybody,
Hmm.
students that I have or anybody who wants to do it is you have to network.
Yeah. Okay.
Have to be a good dude, like I said.
Hmm.
Have to be a great player. You have to do your homework.
Mm.
You got if you show up on gigs, nothing will sit in somebody's mind about you being a badass musician
Hmm.
is if you show up on a gig with no rehearsal or one rehearsal, but you still kill it anyways,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that takes time, that takes practice, that takes notes and charts and all of that kind of stuff. Um, and then, I'm so grateful that I have been sober
Mm.
for 19 years.
Wow. Good for you.
Um,
Yeah.
because I bought a house
Hmm.
as a musician. Like, if I would have been partying every night, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that,
No,
but
I know.
sometimes people get so into it, and you do it for so long, and all of a sudden you don't have money because you just
Yeah.
wasted it, or you've been carefree or whatever. So yeah, I would suggest to anybody that take that money, put it away, invest
Hmm.
it, make wise choices, wise decisions. And then also to try and find a way, because sometimes the road or being a musician, there's so much downtime, there's so much monotony,
Hmm.
that if you aren't centered as a human being, you're gonna drive yourself crazy because of the boredom
Hmm.
and because of the ups and downs.
Yeah.
You get on stage and everybody thinks you're great and whatever. You're still going to go home and be by yourself. I mean, depends on the night, but
Right.
you're still going to have to be with yourself for large amounts of time. So I think developing some kind of meditation practice, some
Hmm.
kind some kind of spiritual practice, not just getting sucked into scrolling on your phone all the time, so that you can be with yourself for large amounts of time. I think all of those things combined help you to sustain.
Wow. That was a mouthful, a really good mouthful. It's very
So,
tasty.
yeah, cool,
But
cool.
Patrick, wow, this has been a pleasure talking with you. I will come up to the stage and say hi to you next time we see you in Asheville.
Yeah, please do.
And I really appreciate your time. You're a gentleman. You're an absolute pro, and
Thanks, man.
I hope that everybody in the world listens to this.
Same. I'm super grateful that you asked me to do it too. I've been looking forward to it.
Oh man, and say hi to your dad for me. Say, hey, that guy
Yeah,
that met you.
will
All right,
do for
brother.
sure.
You take care.
All right, thanks, man. All right, take care. We'll see you.
Bye bye.